Hello, my fellow witches, sorcerers, and other magical practitioners. My name is Aiden, and welcome back to the Sky Snake Sorcery Podcast. This is our second episode, and today we're going to be talking about the Grimoires. More specifically, we're going to be discussing a good way to approach the Grimoires for first-time practitioners or to restructure your Grimoire practice. The actual goal of this episode is to provide a really easy way to navigate the Grimoires, some helpful tips here and there to help study and practice effectively without having to read a million books, look for a million guides, look through all these different things which are honestly super helpful, but when you're starting out can seem very daunting, you're not always sure where to look first, and that's okay. This episode is sort of a what I wish I had when I was going into the Grimoire practices, as well as in general, a good guideline that is very helpful for those who are just starting out, though it's not really going to be a one true way to do everything. It's not going to be this is how you have to do it. This is the true one sole way, and only I know how to help you. Because that is, in fact, not true. This is not going to be an explanation as well of every single possible grimoire. That's better suited for other podcasts that are more academic focused or more lecture focused. This is not about every single Grimmy. Also, I'm going to call them Grimmies. Take it or leave it. This is just what I call them often for shortness and easierness than saying Grimoire. This is also, as you can probably tell by the actual length of this episode, going to be a very long one, which is great for a second episode, but I hope that you will all stick along for it. There's going to be a lot of information packed into here. I recommend taking some notes, as well as cross-referencing with your own information. After the episode's over, be sure to take a look at anything that I mention here, go to any other sources that I present. Be sure to do your own research after this episode. So what exactly is a grimoire? Grimoires are books of magical operations and spirit registries. It comes from the word grammar. They used to be known as grimoires. They vary from being mythical pseudographics, personal notes, and various framing devices. This is generally the three main areas I tend to find grimoires fall into. Usually they have some framing device overall, but it could even be as simple as, these are my working notes, go use them. But generally, they also overlap with other grimoires from the time period or prior. They pull from one another, they share different information, sometimes they have full prayers cut out, sometimes they have prayers completely added onto things. It's a matter of cross-referencing, researching, and checking things out for yourself. Now, the actual origins of the grimoires predate Christianity, though the vast majority of the popular, most well-known grimoires are Christian, or at the very least Abrahamic in some capacity. There are plenty of Jewish grimoires and Islamic grimoires, various manuscripts from all over the world, but a lot of these methods, techniques, even some names come from pre-Christian times, which were also often pretty syncretic. The Greek magical papyri is a great example of this. We can find a lot of origins of grimoire practices appearing early on in these papyri found from around the 300s AD or CE. Now, a lot of these methods originate in these pre-Christian times, but were changed and adapted in accordance with the evolving new religions, especially with being much more monotheistic, rather than having a more polytheistic bent to them. Grimoire magic also eventually became more and more ceremonial, but then eventually became less and less ceremonial. You see this wax and wane with it, where it doesn't always have to be ceremonial, and oftentimes there's what's called magical secrets, which are essentially these spells. Most notably, we find this in the Grimoirium Verum, the Grimy-V, and other similar texts, which have these little spell works that involve the spirits within the grimoire without necessarily having to do a whole full conjuration of them and calling them the physical appearance and all this other great stuff. We find that the grimoires influence all sorts of what we call folk magic now. We find references to the grimoires, we find references to certain tools as well as using certain pentacles, or what often get called pentacles, which are sort of talismanic images that work to affect certain spirits in a certain way. We'll talk a bit more about pentacles in a little bit, as well as much more in depth in an upcoming episode. So, overall, a grimoire is just a book of magic. It has oftentimes spirits in it, as well as techniques, tools, conjurations, and in general ways to engage with the unseen world. While the most famous grimoires would be the Greater Key of Solomon, the Ars Goetia, even the Grand Grimoire, and even the Grimorium Verum, there's numerous manuscripts out there. A lot of things often get called Keys of Solomon, even going as far back as, again, those times that the PGM were being written. We see these little things called Keys of Solomon, as Solomon was recognized as a very important figure in magic, and often gets attributed to various magical manuscripts, books, or even little spells, which get called Keys of Solomon eventually. A very similar thing happens with Moses, as well as Saint Cyprian, and various other real magicians, fictionalized characters, or people who were actually very anti-magic, and were just turned into magicians or alchemists one way or another. Working with these patrons is something that we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode, but it is something to keep in mind that it is more than likely that most of these people didn't actually write the grimoires that we're attributing them to. This is called pseudographia, which is essentially false attribution to a particular person. Generally, it was done to, one, retain anonymity, as well as provide notoriety for the actual book that you're reading. It's much cooler to read The Greater Key of Solomon rather than the really cool Grimmy of John Doe, you know? I personally have quite a bit of experience with the grimoires, hence why I'm talking about them here. The grimoires have a huge influence on my life. When I got started with the Greater Key of Solomon, it was mostly just working with the pentacles. That's really what got me started down this track. I was about 15 when I found this video by Balthazar Conjure, who now goes by BLTHZR, Balthazar, on YouTube. It is probably his most well-known video, the Solomonic Pentacle spell work. I think it's called Kabbalistic Candle Spell or something like that. It's a phenomenal video and a phenomenal introduction to a very simple way of applying folk magical traditions to Solomonic magic, using the Pentacles of Solomon, some candles, incense, herbs, and prayer. You can get so much done. This really got me going. I started experimenting with these pentacles, trying things out, and growing my practice further and further from there. I would devour so many books, blogs, articles, videos, anything I could get my hands on about these pentacles, and eventually about other grimoires, spirits from them, various intelligences, and things like that. I eventually started to explore other grimoires, more specifically the Arbitel of Magic, the Ars Goetia, the Ars Paulina, and several other manuscripts. Right now I'm currently exploring the Black Pullet and a couple others that I'll keep a bit more unnamed. The Book of Oberon is also a great influence on me, and other things such as the Grimoire of Arthur Gauntlet, which are much different than the classic Key of Solomon. And after years of working with these grimoires, there's a lot that I really wish I knew at the very beginning. There's so much going on with these books, there's so much information that can be really overwhelming at the start, and especially when there's so many different opinions, so many different new dogmas written out about them. So that's a large reason why I wanted to create this episode, and also why I'm really excited about this one. There's so many things that I really just wish I knew at the beginning, that now that I'm many years down the line in my practice, I am finally ready to just start giving my personal advice, experiences, and things like that. This is probably going to be the first in quite a long series where I talk about the grimoires. I'll probably talk about individual grimoires at different points, talk about more specific techniques and the like, but for right now I just want to give you all a really nice rundown and an easy source point to look at for starting out with the practice. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The first thing that usually comes up when looking at any of these grimoires is all the tools required. Every grimoire has its own unique set of tools, all these different conjurations for the tools, planetary elections, timings, all this other stuff. There are so many things that go into creating these tools, and they're really important. Now, a lot of them might seem inconsequential, especially when you look at, again, the Greater Key of Solomon, which I'll reference the most out of because that is the grimoire that I've worked the most with. The Greater Key of Solomon has a million different individualistic little tools, anything from the Bruin of the art to the sickle of the art to the white hilted knife, the black hilted knife, to some more obscure things such as the magical garters. Now, not all of these are required, and I think that's the biggest thing to understand going forward, is that not every single tool is going to be required for every single conjuration you're going to be doing. What is important is to have the right tools for the right job. And I highly recommend having a few right from the get-go that you can just keep working and building out your repertoire for. So the most basic tools that you'll be using all the time are your consumables. That's candles, incense, and holy water. These are probably the things you're going to be using the absolute most, other than paper and a whole bunch of other stuff, but these are things that you're going to be using the most frequently. For candles, it's best to honestly just buy white candles in bulk. A lot of places sell tons of white candles. I get packs of 72 pretty much every time I get a chance to, especially when they go on sale. When I started doing this, they were around $9 each, and now it's gone up to like $11. We love the economy so much. It's so awesome and amazing. But these candles can be consecrated, prayed over, and kept away in a silk cloth, silk or linen, or just white cloth. I highly recommend investing in several candles that you keep unconsecrated and you have some that you keep consecrated. Having a bunch of candles is super helpful because, one, they provide light. They are usable in all kinds of spell work, which we'll talk about a little bit here and there, though I think I'll do a whole episode on Grimoire spell work on its own. But they are probably the most consumable item that you'll use, right next to the planetary incense. We'll talk a bit more in depth about planetary magic, planetary timings a little bit later in this video, but it's also good to have from the start 7 basic planetary incenses. Now, I personally prefer resins and herbs. If you're just starting out, you can honestly use stick incense. A lot of resources will talk about the planetary incenses and which ones are best for which planet, and you can honestly use whatever ones most appeal to you. I use jasmine for the moon, dragon's blood for Mars, lavender for Mercury, cedar for Jupiter, rose for Venus, myrrh for Saturn, and frankincense for the Sun. Those are my go-tos. There are plenty of others. Agrippa mentioned several. Pretty much every grimoire will mention in some capacity an incense. If they're doing planetary magic, they will mention some form of incense, whether that's a blend of incenses, a specific way to make them, or they might just say use frankincense and myrrh. Frankincense and myrrh is also pretty good for just a general conjuration. You'll also be using holy water a lot, and there's a lot of kind of back and forth and debate about what type of holy water to use. Some people say you should get holy water from a church. Some people say you can make it yourself. I have done both on and off one way or another, and I have not fully found a hard determinate difference. I do find there is a bit more power in using holy water from a church, and especially if I can get holy water from the church I was confirmed in. That has a certain power to it, but I was also raised Catholic, so that also adds a layer to it where I understand the mysteries that go into the creation of holy water, as well as the authority that a priest might have over my own authority, even though I am not a Catholic. We'll talk a bit more about Abrahamicism and specifically Christianity in relation to the grimoires later on as well. But in general, holy water is used quite a bit. It goes into pretty much every consecration. You sprinkle with holy water, you asperge with the holy water, and some hyssop, often, though not always. There are various herbs that do get used in different grimoires. The Grimorium Verum has a lot of great examples of this. There's also plenty in the Greater Key of Solomon. Hyssop is the most well-known one, which comes from Psalm 51. Purge me, O Lord, with hyssop, and I shall be pure. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Which is also a really good psalm to use in general. I highly recommend using that in conjunction with a lot of things. Solemn Magic will also probably be an episode at some point on its own. But having these three already well in stock, whether you make the holy water yourself or you get it from a church, which also quick heads up, because I found out very recently this is not common knowledge. You're totally allowed to take like holy water, at least in America. I know this is different in other places, but you're totally allowed to take holy water. Most places will have a little fount. Some places will have you asking for it at first. Like you might have to go to a priest and ask for it, but you can get it for free. Just bring a vessel with you. I have a little vial that I have full of holy water that I refill pretty frequently. I personally only get holy water from Catholic churches. This is showing my papist bias, I'm sure, but I find that Catholic holy water is going to work better than the Protestant holy water. Because there's different mysteries involved, Orthodox holy water probably also works about the same. I just haven't gone to an Orthodox church. I'll leave you all to determine that for yourselves. This is just how I personally do it. Research and think about the mysteries you're getting involved in there. Or just make it yourself. That kind of avoids that whole Catholic discourse versus Protestant discourse versus Orthodox and all that stuff. Outside of these consumables, you'll also have several different tools that I think are good to start out with before you go getting a million other tools. And I'll explain why for each one, as well as a brief way to do each of them and some pointers for them. So the first, probably most important one in my opinion, is the Book of the Art, or your grimoire, your little Grimmy. And there's a bunch of different ways to make these. I have a method that I personally like, that I've seen a lot of people recommend, the Key of Solomon's version of it. I have never done the Greater Key of Solomon's version of making the Book of the Art, primarily because it takes 7 days, it's a lot of work, and it's got a weird setup, and I just haven't done it because I don't like it. I'm gonna be so honest. But I have a different method that I much more prefer, that's a little bit easier, and I would like to recommend you all try. And I find that it helps form a stronger bond between you and the book itself. Now, I will also say that I do my own bookbinding. I don't particularly know any great places to buy pre-made books. I know there are those places that have like those leather-bound journals that also have like designs on the front. I don't like them having designs. I'm very plain about mine. I prefer to have a very plain design that I can then embellish if I should need to. So for my method, I get the book, I get 2 white candles, a white cloth, some wine, and in general, any good incense is fine. I recommend frankincense and myrrh. You can also add in mastic. Mastic is another mercurial incense that is my second go-to after lavender. I find that frankincense, myrrh, and mastic make a really, really nice blend, especially in relation to magic, especially a more mercurial nature, which is what this is best suited for because the book is inherently mercurial. Even if you infuse it with other things, the book will always be inherently mercurial because the act of writing in a magical book is extremely conducive to the virtues of Mercury. On the front page, you will write the name of the book. This is a me thing. I name every single tool, every single thing I create, including like charm bags, powders, oils. All these things have a name so that I can call and conjure them by and be able to engage with them on a much more deep level. I find that this is important and helpful. If you don't have a particular name in mind, you can literally just call it the grimoire of your name. Then you'll put on the front page, I like to draw a circle. You can draw any sign you want, or you can draw nothing and just have it blank. But you'll have a space dedicated to where you're going to put a little bit of the wine. This is to feed the book. This is to awaken it. This is to really bring it to life further. And you're also going to sign the book. This is to put your personal signature on it. Now, another way you can go about this is adding your own blood to it. I only have done that for one book, and that's a very particular reason. I'm a bit weird about blood. I'm going to be honest. I'm one of those people who's particularly weird about blood and things. I do use blood for quite a few things. I have a couple of spirits who take my blood, but I am very specific and very particular about how I use it, about where it's going, and how it's actually implemented. So do that at your own discretion. Blood is helpful. We'll talk a bit more about blood in terms of packs later, but I would be remiss to not say anything about blood, and to also not give caution and warning, because your blood has a lot of things in it that can be really beneficial for spirit conjuration and very negative for spirit conjuration. In particular, it gives pretty much anything that has access to it access to you very quickly. So be careful. But having that signature on there is helpful as still a tag lock and a link, but not one that is so direct and strong. You can also even put your magical name in there. I go back and forth on this. Some people like to have a magical name that they give out to spirits and then keep their personal one. I have found that this doesn't work for too long, for me at least. For other people, it probably works just fine. For me, I tried doing like that for a couple spirits and they found out very quickly because people like to say my name a lot. So this is especially difficult with local spirits that you are around a lot because you're in an urban environment and not necessarily out on your own in the woods where you can do that. So, yeah, up to you on that front. But what you'll do is you'll light the candles, you'll light the incense, and I won't give you all the exact prayers to use, but make prayers over the book, call the book into being, bless the book, give it a proper name, go through a naming ceremony, and feed it its first drop of wine. Again, this doesn't have to be a deep drop of wine. This can just be a little drop. And allow it to permeate the pages, allow it to get into the book itself, and speak to the book directly. Tell it its purpose, tell it why it's being created, tell it the powers that it needs to have, and continue to call down various powers. A litany to the angels is very common to use. You can do things. You can even do a lot of Catholic or Orthodox novenas and litanies. Those can be found easily online. You can add to it various psalms. There's a lot of really good ones that you can use. I would recommend, in general, Psalm 23 is always going to be amazing and perfect in all ways, shapes, and forms. Psalm 91 is also helpful. Psalm 125 too. All these different things can go into it. I recommend looking at the Psalms, at the very least for inspiration. Looking at the Psalms used in some of the Pentacles. You can draw upon the 5th Pentacle of Mars because that has a particularly warding effect to it, especially against malefic spirits. It says demons. That's a complex subject. But it's generally really good against malefic spirits. You can even draw this pentacle and use that as your part that you're feeding. There's a lot of different things you can do with the customization of the book itself. I would also recommend burying the book at a crossroads after this whole process is done. That is really helpful because crossroads spirits have a particular energy and particular power over them. I would leave it for a full cycle of the moon. Additionally, you can even add things to the paper itself that you're putting in the book to consecrate it. The Greater Key of Solomon has a consecration for the paper, which is very helpful. It's usually done for paper that you're turning into pentacles, but you can use this for everything. If you want to get like a big batch of petition paper done, this is a great way to use it. You'll then, after you've let the candles go down and the incense go out, you're going to wrap up the book in the cloth. Again, this cloth can either be linen or silk or just a nice white cloth. You can draw the sigils from the, again, Greater Key of Solomon for the silken cloth onto it and consecrate it that way. I like doing that. I'm a big fan of that cloth. It's very good and very helpful. But once this book is done, it is now enlivened. It's now able to receive information, to work on your behalf. And that's really the goal with it for me, is to have a working ally who is more than just a book that has words in it. It is a living, active ally and living, active spirit that can help you. And it will grow over time. It will gain the various signatures of the spirits. It will gain the various familiars. And you'll write into it all the conjurations you're going to be using, all the psalms that you're going to be using, what they're for, as well as the various magical secrets that you'll receive from these spirits. There's a lot that can be done with this book, and I highly, highly recommend making one. First things first, above everything else, make this book first. In whatever form it may take, it doesn't have to be a super nice, elaborate leather journal. I'm actually working on one right now that is not leather at all. I'm not going to talk about it quite yet until that whole process is done. I do believe in the virtue of keeping silent. I'm very careful about what all I share. I do share a lot, but I don't share quite a lot. We'll put it like that. Now, the second tool that I highly recommend having is some form of wand. There's a lot of different woods you can make this from. I have a very nice ebony wand because I do a lot of work with the Drawing Spirits into Crystal manuscript. It's really good. I will talk about that in a little bit in more detail, but the ebony wand from that is really helpful. It's a mercurial wand. We see ebony wands being used for Hermes all the way again back into PGM. Ebony is a great tool because Mercury is a very important planet and archetype for conjuration, for the act of magic itself, for the work of drawing these pentacles, these sigils, the writing. Mercury is very important, and Mercury is probably my biggest patron in terms of the magical arts. Similarly, hazel is good for this. Hazel's also tied to Mercury. Hazel's been a bit difficult for me to get in the past. I have gotten it before. It is a bit more difficult to get, so I lean more towards something else. Oak. Oak is not necessarily mercurial. It's usually attributed to Jupiter. That's what I attribute it to as well. But oak has a lot of different properties to it that are very helpful. In particular, oak's ties to the truth and to telling the truth and ensuring the truth, which is very helpful for conjurations. I have been using oak as a wand before I got really deep into magic. My very first Arbitel conjuration used an oak wand. I fully support the use of oak over ebony and hazel if you cannot get anything else. Oak is a lot more widely available. A big thing that you will find is having that very strong spirit relationship is more important than having the fanciest tools. If you have an oak wand from a tree that you have nurtured, that you have spoken to, that you have made offerings to, that's going to be much more powerful than the nicest ebony wand that you buy online. Which I didn't buy mine online. I did buy the physical wood online, but I worked it myself. Now, the wand can be consecrated in several different ways. My ebony wand was very simple. I literally just put holy oil on it and said some psalms. Very easy. It has golden names and symbols on it from Trithemius, Drawing Spirits into a Crystal. And I've carved wood. I've put different things into those carvings. But generally, honestly, holy water, holy oil, and some prayer is more than enough. Fumigation is also helpful. That's always going to be the easiest way to do anything, quite honestly. Good elections for it are Mercury day at dawn, during the waxing moon, or even on the full moon if you can manage that. You can do more than one consecration, you can do one consecration. Ideally, you're also supposed to cut the wand in one quick stroke after saying a prayer. In some grimoires, it's literally in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Then you cut the wand, and that's your wand. I'm very much an animist. I would honestly recommend making a contract, speaking to that wood and to that tree. Bring to it offerings over the period of, at the very least, a few days. If you can, go for a month and really speak to it about your goals and build up your relationship with that tree, because that tree is also going to become a magical ally. I have spoken to various trees and they have been very helpful in giving me various things. I got a particular grimoire tool that's not talked about a bunch from a tree that I built up a relationship with. I offered prayers to, that I offered milk and honey to. Milk and honey is my go-to for feeding any plant whatsoever, if you're trying to gain their more sweet aspects at the very least. If you're trying to be more on their good side, if you're trying to have them sweet to you, I recommend milk and honey above everything else. These can be poured at the base of the tree. Make prayers to the tree, make prayers to the patrons of the trees. Some places have specific saints set over trees. You might have certain deities or other spirits that are important to those trees. Make prayer and petition to them and build up your relationship. That will have a much stronger effect on the actual wand itself. Those 3 trees that are recommended are ebony, hazel, and oak. There are other recommendations out there, but hazel is by far the most recommended. Ebony second, and I haven't seen a ton of references to oak wands, but it's definitely out there, and I fully endorse oak wands. There's other trees that you could probably also work with. Look at your local landscape, look at your local history, the lore around there, as well as forming specific relationships with those plants in the natural world around you. Your local spirits are going to be very important allies overall to the actual work. The next tool we'll talk about is the Knife of the Art, more specifically the Black Hilted Knife. There's a bunch of different ways to make these. I've made them in a couple different ways, both much more Solomonic and Abrahamic, as well as some more PGM style ways. I'm going to give a couple recommendations, as well as my own method that is probably going to be much more simpler. You'll find that I do a lot of very simple methods because I very much also believe that when you're doing this work, as long as you're putting in all these prayers, as long as you're putting in the actual force necessary, it's going to be much more effective than getting everything perfectly to the T right. Because also the reason you're doing all these things perfectly to the T is for their virtues. And a lot of stuff is left out. A lot of prayer is actually left out of these grimoires because there's an expectation that you'll be doing it. They'll be doing additional things on top of this work. And there is no one true perfect way to do all of this. There are multiple methods to make the exact same tool across grimoires. So this is why I recommend honestly cross-referencing grimoires and seeing what methods you like best. The actual Black Hilted Knife is a tool used for carving out the circle, for keeping spirits in line. It's also helpful outside of conjuration. I like to use the Black Hilted Knife for a lot of different things, honestly. But it's really good for cleansing, I find. If you go over to someone who has a lot of stuff on them, you can take that Black Hilted Knife and make various crosses, X's, working down them to cut away the ill influences. I've done this for house blessing as well. You can also incorporate it in things like breakup work, curses, things like that. Less nice things. I have actually used it in reconciliation work by severing their breakup and returning them back together. Be creative with these tools. There's a lot of different things that can go into them, a lot of different ways to work them even outside the magic circle. So there is the method in the Greater Key of Solomon for creating the Black Hilted Knife, where you mix henbane and black cat's blood together on Saturn Day, I believe. It is a method that definitely works. I believe Polyphanes, over on his blog Digital Amber, talks about a substitution for cat's blood and the way that he made his knife. I have not done this substitution, I have not done this particular method. This is not one that I have had the chance to try out. I don't have access easily to black cat's blood, and I have easier access to henbane, but I haven't been in a space where it's easy or safe to make this. So I haven't gone with this method. But it is a very classic method. It is one that definitely works. I have done the method from Magister Officiorum. That is a really good book to take a look at in general if you're interested in specifically Goetia. It has a lot of these tools in it, has methods for creating them, as well as gives a really easy outline for working through the Goetic hierarchies through Grimoire, or Gemon, which is a particular spirit tied and linked to the King of the West, Payman. It also has a bunch of other formulas and working rituals in it that I've tried out quite a bit of. It's a really great book to check out. The method for creating a knife in there is pretty simple. It is a creation of a Mars oil during a specific election. I'm not going to give the full recipe here because it's in a book that you can buy, but I do recommend that method. Another method that I found is helpful, that works pretty well, is to take a knife. Ideally, by the way, this knife should be one that's already been stained by death, a knife that has killed someone. It doesn't have to be necessarily. I have not made one that hasn't killed someone, so It doesn't have to be one that you personally have killed someone with, but there's a lot of really easy ways to find knives that have been used to kill someone. Especially look at military stores, look at auctions. eBay.com will tell you, hey, this knife was used in war. This bayonet was used in war. It's probably killed someone. You can do divination further to find out if the one that you have or the one you're looking at is one that will give you the necessary qualities. But you can bury the knife at the cemetery for a period of a lunar cycle, new moon to new moon, while pouring various things on top of it, making various prayers over it. I would recommend petitioning the sorceress dead, as well as petitioning the gatekeeper, grave lord, and death in general, as well as making prayers to the various angels on the various days of the week, and burning candles on top of it, pouring over it. I would pour over it something like rum that would feed it, that would heat it up, and speaking to it exactly what it needs to do, and getting it acquainted with the realm of death and the underworld. You'll then exhume it again on the new moon and take it to be blessed by a priest. This adds in its sorceress and conjurative power. Now, a priest doesn't have to know that he's blessing this knife, right? A very common thing to do is to get a basket, fill it up with other things that you want to bless. I would put your book in here too. I would put a Bible on top. You can put rosaries on top. All kinds of things. Pentacles can be put into the Bible. There's a lot you can do with this. And I'm a very big fan of doing everything all in one go. You get it blessed by a priest. You take it during the Saturn Day Mars hour or Mars Day Saturn hour, or both, and scald it in a mixture of Mars and Saturn oil mixed with a little bit of holy oil. To scald it, you will heat up the oil and then you will dip the knife into it for a short moment, take it out, let it cool a little bit, stick it back in, take it out. I would do sets of 3 and then sets of 5 and then sets of 3 again. 3, 5, 3. That's what I would do. Now, to make these oils, there's a lot of different methods to do them, millions of recipes out there. I would recommend taking 5 martial herbs, and specifically I would get conjurative and protective herbs together. Dragon's blood and rue definitely would have in there. Take a look at your local area too. You want to have some of that local influence, and especially look at places like the cemetery for the Saturn oil, as well as churches, battlefields for the Mars oil. And if you can find a sorceress person who had died in your area and there is a plant growing on top of their grave, add that in, 100%. Saturn oil will be 3 herbs that, again, have that more coercive, more domineering aspect to them. You will let these sit for a certain amount of time. I personally, for planetary oils, I recommend doing it in the planetary number. So it can be 5 weeks or 5 months. 5 years is quite a bit. If you really feel like you need that just to make this one tool, go for it. But 5 months is plenty to let it really infuse. And while it's sitting in there, you're going to be praying over it. You'll be shaking it during the Mars hour. I recommend the night hour for both of these. Night hour is going to be best for both of these. But you're going to be shaking it, praying over it. I recommend honestly praying all the Psalms from the Mars Pentacles and all the Psalms from the Saturn Pentacles. That will really charge it with that power. You can do all kinds of things to these oils. I'm not going to get into all of them right here. But then you'll pour that into a pot large enough for you to actually dip the knife into fully. At the very least the blade. And mix in some holy oil. You can get holy oil from pretty much any Catholic or Orthodox store. You can get holy oil from Doc Solomon, aka Aaron Leach, online. I use that oil, really good. You can make your own. There's various recipes out there. I personally recommend getting it from an ordained person. Again, that's my bias. You mix that with the holy oil. You mix these together, and then you scald the knife, take it out. I name them. You know, that's up to you. But let it cool, wrap it up, keep it in a scabbard, and use that only in ritual. Again, you know, this doesn't have to be conjuration all the time, but only use it in a magical context. After the knife, I recommend making the magic circle. So there's a couple different ways to go about this. There are a million different magic circles out there. A lot of them are also derivative of each other. I recommend researching the ones that best suit your needs. I'm very biased and think the Goetia Mathers one is really, really good. That is the one with the Ouroboros, with all the names of the angels. The reason I like that one is it is the closest to a universal circle that I can think of, in all honesty. It has all of the angel names on it for each sphere of the universe. It is designed to call upon any power in the universe. It's pretty much always going to work for you, regardless of what spirits you are contacting. So you only have to make one, ever. So I really like it for that reason. But there's a lot of other really good ones out there. Magister Officiorum has one that I like as well. That one is a really good one to use. I've used it to great effect. The Grand Grimoire, as well as the Black Pullet, share a similar circle that's also really good. I like it. Greater Key has multiple circles for different purposes. I have only used one of them, and that is the circle for creating the pentacles. I like it. I don't think it's super necessary. And this also gets into the question of reusable versus single-use circles, meaning circles that you draw onto a chart or onto cloth that you keep forever and ever and ever, versus one that you draw in chalk or flour or some other tool solely for one-time use that is then washed away and never used again because it's gone forever. I like both for different reasons. It is really dependent on the conjuration. I tend to work grimoires pretty close to how they're originally done and then add in my own stuff, or at least in terms of overall structure, we'll start to add in my own stuff later. It's kind of up to you. Having one circle that you use all the time is really helpful, and then you can just draw with chalk or whatever for the cases where you just want to use that one circle for that one time. So there's not really a consecration for the circle outside of the psalms and the greater key and the prayers that you say entering the circle that are usually found in most things. But I recommend a whole bunch of stuff for this. So if you're creating a permanent circle that you're going to keep using forever and ever, amen, I recommend playing hymns while you are creating this circle. Have a set time and space for it. I recommend doing this all in the Mercury day and hour, or at the very least in the Mercury hour on auspicious days. Avoiding, I mean, you can do it on Saturday and Tuesday if you believe that that's helpful for you. There's different reasons you would want to and why you wouldn't want to. Up to you. But Mercury hour is my recommendation personally. You can do whatever elections are best for you. But having that timing, having that frame, having that set space is really helpful. I recommend burning candles that are exercised while you're doing it. I recommend fumigating some frankincense or the planetary incense of that day while you're doing it. Really get into a ritual headspace. You are creating a tool that is going to help you for so much more time than just this moment. I recommend also consecrating all of the tools that you're going to be using. There are consecrations for pretty much everything, and if you can't find a consecration for it, you can usually find someone who's made one online, or you can use a general all-purpose consecration on it, which can be literally as simple as holy water, Psalm 23, and then a prayer for intention over what's going to do. Really easy stuff. I recommend consecrating the paintbrushes, the paint, the cloth itself, as well as anything else you're going to be using during that time. For hymns, I have a lot that I listen to. I like a lot of Orthodox music. I wasn't raised Orthodox, but I like a lot of Orthodox music for this. It is about attuning yourself more into that holy sphere. Since I largely work from a Abrahamic perspective, I work from a Christian aesthetic. It's hard to say. We'll talk about this more later. But because the grimoires that I work, I operate them through the power of God. I will show some reverence for that. I have particular saints that are important for this. I don't identify as a Catholic. I don't believe what I'm doing is in any way tied to Catholicism. What I do believe is that these spirits that I'm engaging with enjoy this music. I believe that the spirits I'm engaging with find this prayer good and helpful, and it is conducive to the overall work. So you don't have to be a Christian of any capacity to incorporate these practices into your life. I am working through these forces to the ends that I desire. There's a lot to get into with that. I think that might be a whole episode in and of itself. But suffice to say, fumigating the circle is important. Saying prayers while you're working. I honestly recommend also saying prayer for success from the Grimoire Verum before starting any session of working on this or any magical tool. It is a prayer to bring success to whatever you're undertaking. It's also great to say before any sort of prayer. I also really like to put Crown of Success oil onto my petitions, candles, anything that I'm working. The prayer for success over the Crown of Success oil to grant the spell work success. Shout out to B Key from the Frightful Howls You May Hear podcast and with Coming in Command for suggesting that to me. Shout out to him for that. Really helpful, changes the game completely. But once you have the circle done, it is finally ready for you to just hold on to. I recommend having a place where you keep all of these tools together. It doesn't have to be something super elaborate. It can be a nice box that you put sigils and prayers and consecrations over that's only open to take the tools in and out. Keep the tools wrapped up. That's my general recommendation. Keep the circle with aromatic and fragrant herbs. Keep the wand with aromatic and fragrant herbs. Keep the next tool, the robe, with the aromatic and fragrant herbs as well. You could do that with the knife. I wouldn't. I would keep that in its own separate encasement, personally, but that's just me. Now, for the circle that's not going to be reusable, the one you draw in chalk, flour, etc., there's a lot of different things you can do with that to really empower it. I would do the same prayers, hymns, consecrations you would do for the complete circle, even for the temporary circle. I would add in a couple different things as well. It can be helpful to create your own chalk, for example, that has different infused herbs in it. You can add hyssop to that. You could add mastic, frankincense, all powdered up together and put that into the chalk. You can create flour that is specifically tied to the planetary forces you're trying to invoke. So for example, if you're doing an operation that is very focused around Venus, you can get several Venusian herbs, 7 of them in particular, crush them up and then mix that in with the flour, praying and blessing it all the while. You can even add things like a conjuration oil, not a conjure oil, but a conjuration oil to aid in the power of your conjuration. Some protection oils, fiery wall protection might also be very helpful. And all these other things just to really amp up and empower the overall working. As I teased just a moment ago, the robe is our final mandatory-ish tool. I'm hesitant to say mandatory, because I'm like, oh, this is non-dogmatic, but the robe is very important and it's also pretty easy to make. Now, there's some very expensive robes online that I look at all the time, like, man, I really want that. But you can also use a white dress. I have a white dress that I use as my robe. Doesn't matter your gender, you can wear a dress, it's not that deep. But I have a white robe that I like to use. I only use it for ritual. It's been fumigated plenty of times. It's been consecrated by the virtue of being in ritual. This is something that's also talked about sometimes, is that sometimes the most powerful tool is a tool that's just used in ritual all the time, that's only ever used in ritual. For me, that's my white dress. It's been fumigated, sure, but it's also been empowered by the effects of ritual. I don't necessarily have a particular prayer you can say over it. It might be fun to wash it in holy water, or maybe a mixture of herbs. Yeah, you could put like some hyssop, rosemary, maybe some other herb added to that, and then add in holy water, and then let that steep and then wash the robe in that. That could be helpful, and then fumigate with frankincense. But I haven't done that. That's just off the top of my head. I use a white robe exclusively. You can use a black robe if you would like. Some grimoires call for particular robes. Some of them say they have to be one used by a priest. Again, I use a white dress. It's not that deep. You could also make your own robe. I know some people who have done that. It is a bit intensive. I worked at making my own robe at one point. It was too much. I didn't have a pattern either, so that was kind of my problem. It's not super difficult if you already make clothes, but if you haven't made clothes before, I just recommend buying a robe or buying a white dress. Plain, very simple, very easy. You can embroider it with sigils, you can embroider it with signs and imagery if you would like, but you don't have to necessarily do that. Again, this is one of those things where I'm like, the robe can really just be consecrated by its use and by its proximity to other items. So just keeping it with the other items by that virtue will help it obtain necessary virtue. So you have all your tools finally. You're ready to go. What do you do first? There's so many grimoires out there. There's so many spirits. Where do you go from here? So this is my personal recommendation that I think is super underrated, super not talked about, and really changed everything for me forever. Like, this is like, I don't want to sound like one of those people who's like, doctors won't tell you this, but the feds won't tell you this. Few know this, dare I say. But I recommend getting 7 planetary familiars. This is like literally the biggest game changer for me. I'm starting to sound like an alpha male podcaster. I'm not, I promise. But the 7 planetary familiars really are so helpful. They make planetary magic much easier to operate, especially outside of the hours, because you don't have to wait for that hour. You can call upon your planetary familiar. I recommend doing it during the day at the very least, but if you're on the go and you need a certain type of magic done that a planetary spirit would be especially helpful towards, call up your familiar and they can do it outside of the hours. They can also call upon that planetary force that you gained them from and bring that presence forward. They can also help you understand the planets on a much deeper level, on a more interpersonal level, and connect you more deeply with the planets. Planetary magic is hugely important to so many of the grimoires. They rely on the days, the hours. Certain spirits only are able to be called during certain planetary times and elections. They can also help you understand astrology much better. Honestly, aside from another pack that I have with the Prince Stolas, my planetary familiars have been so helpful for helping me understand astrology in relation to everything else. It's so helpful. They also empower various planetary operations. So if you have a planetary working that you're doing, let's say you're making a Venus talisman, you would go to that spirit and ask, hey, when's the best Venus day to do this? And they'll direct you towards it. You will bring up what you might want to do with it. You'll also perform the planetary operation, conjure that spirit, and help them bring forth more of those essences more powerfully. They can teach you how to do better planetary magic. They can teach you the way that they actually perform magic themselves. Oh, it is so helpful. It is life-changing material, genuinely. And again, like, they just really help you understand the planets. They can help you in any sort of spell work. I invoke them all the time in all my spells. I bring them forward in various ways. And it's all very simple and easy to do. So where do you actually go to get the planetary spirits? I'm going to start with the spirits that I have and where I went to get them, and then give 2 other examples, but there's a bunch of other options out there. You don't even have to go fully Abrahamic with them. These are all Abrahamic examples. But you can go to other sources. You can go more specifically towards things like the gods of the 7 days. So for example, the Greek gods of the 7 days would be Selene or Artemis for the moon or for Monday, Aries for Tuesday, Mars Day, Hermes for Mercury Day, which is Wednesday, Zeus for Jupiter Day or Thursday, Aphrodite for Venus Day or Friday, Kronos for Saturn Day, and Helios or Apollo for Sunday. My approach personally for getting the planetary spirits was going to the Olympic spirits of the Arbitel. The Arbitel is a very approachable grimoire. The Olympic spirits are extraordinarily approachable, and they each already offer to give you familiars. I did what's called the planetary gambit. I don't know if that's like what other people call it, but that's kind of what my friend group calls it, where you go through all 7 in the Chaldean order, or you can go through them all in a week if you're crazy. I did the Chaldean order. I gave myself like a pretty much a day or two break between each. You call them all up, you ask for a familiar, and a couple other things we'll talk about a little bit later more in depth, but the biggest thing is you ask them for a familiar. I personally advise against asking for a familiar for a specific purpose, but rather to ask them to give you a familiar best conducive to you. This is just the most helpful way for me personally, I would say. You can go back later and ask for more specific familiars for more specific tasks, even like temporary familiars, but this will help you get a really good basis of 7 planetary familiars that are all conducive to you, all conducive to your personal mysteries, to your personal practices. It's just so much better. Get a name, a sigil, and have some idea of what that familiar looks like, as well as getting a conjuration for them. You will find some interesting things come about with this. And the Olympic spirits are just so approachable. I operated them through the Trithemius method. My very first conjurations of them, I had a stick, I had their sigil, and I had a dream. And it worked. They come forth very quickly, very easily. They're very amenable to people. They don't have a ton of protocols already. They want to be around you. They want to be with you. The conjuration should only take the span of the planetary hour, which is between an actual hour and sometimes a little bit shorter, sometimes a little bit longer. It depends on the individual day itself, in all honesty, because planetary hours are calculated sunrise to sunset to sunrise the next day. A planetary day is from dawn to the next dawn. So it fluctuates and varies, especially depending on the time of the year, the seasons, all of this stuff, and if you believe in daylight savings. Which is the most frustrating part about planetary magic, is the insanity of daylight savings and time zones. But once you have these 7 planetary spirits, you'll be able to do so much with them. It is just life-changing material. Aside from the Arbital, I recommend just going to the 7 archangels. So there's different 7 archangels depending on which hierarchy you're looking at. The 7 archangels that I am most familiar with, that a lot of people tend to agree on, I believe these are also the ones in the Greater Key. There's Gabriel, the moon, Camael, sometimes Samael for Mars, Raphael for Mercury, Sachiel for Jupiter, Anael for Venus, Cassiel for Saturn, and Michael for the Sun. They can be approached through more sorceress methods. I've heard people go to them through the 7 Spheres, which is a book by Rufus Opus. I've not approached them that way. You can approach them the more Golden Dawn way, doing the LBRP, Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, LIRP, Lesser Invoking Ritual of the Pentagram, the Ritual of the Hexagram, specifically for the planets, which is called the Greater Ritual of the Hexagram, then doing an invocation of those spirits through the god name. That's the way to do it. I've done that before when I was a bit more Golden Dawn pilled. I'm not really doing Golden Dawn stuff or Thelonic stuff at all, so that is an approach if you like that. It's really easy to just start doing that. You can also go about it by praying to the archangels. Very simply, do a novena to the archangel. On the last day, ask that archangel to show up and grant you a familiar. That's really easy and you can do it. You just have to draw their sigil on their candle if you want. You can get an image of them. Again, Balthazar Conjure has image candles for these spirits if you want to engage with them that way. That does require a lot more mediumistic skill, and I would honestly only recommend that if you're really interested in engaging with these archangels, especially as spirit patrons. It might take a bit longer than doing a full conjuration if you're doing like the novena style, but they're really easy to get in contact with. Another thing you can do is pray a rosary and ask the Virgin Mary to bring forth this angel. Again, this would require you to be a bit more inoculated in Marian culture and practices around the Virgin Mary. I grew up with that. Mary, Queen of Angels. That's how I approach angels. If I want to approach them, I just go through the Virgin Mary. Or you can go through some other saint, or just petition the Holy Trinity. They're not super difficult to call upon and interface with if you really want to. I don't particularly do a ton with them. That's just me personally, but they're very approachable. You can do a full conjuration if you'd like. There's plenty of angelic conjuration grimoires out there. Even the Greater Key is an angelic conjuration grimoire. I personally would just go the novena route or the rosary route, but they can also give you 7 familiars tied to 7 planets. There are other angelic hierarchies, there's different opinions on them. Sometimes Michael takes the place of Raphael, Michael being more mercurial. Experiment, see what works best. These are kind of the standard ones that I tend to find most accurate and more easily approachable. I do sometimes find different ones for Saturn and Jupiter, though. For a third interesting option, there are the aerial spirits, which are a various general category that appear in different places. The Heptameron has a good set of them and is a pretty good system for conjuring them. I recommend the Heptameron for a pretty strong basis in conjuration. They have 7 aerial spirits that you can approach and that you can call upon and that you can get familiars from. This is a pretty good way to approach them. I haven't done a ton with the aerial spirits of the Heptameron. I've done a little bit with Varkon, which is the solar spirit from the Heptameron. And I've done some not quite Heptameron work with these spirits in other traditions, but you can approach them in different ways. Aerial spirits are this weird third category that's not like an angel, it's not like a demon, they're just spirits that inhabit the air. They're interesting. If you call them up, ask them what an aerial spirit is. You'll get some fun answers. They can also give you 7 planetary familiars. Any set of 7 will be good. They'll be conducive to you, they'll be helpful for you. I just really love the Arbitel spirits quite a bit. So I've been talking quite a bit about planetary magic. I should probably give a little bit more detail about it right now. So I recommend that you learn a lot about planetary magic before you fully go into engaging with these spirits. I recommend, at the very least, starting out by learning the hours and days. These are very, very simple things to learn. Each day of the week is ruled by the planets. The 7 classical planets, I should say. There's not really any system for the 3 new planets, the trans-Saturnian planets of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. I have not really found a concrete full system for them. The 7 classical planets are also important for other reasons beyond astronomical accuracy. A very important thing to know, astrology is not astronomically accurate. There's a very important reason for that. It is not based on the physical ecliptic, it is based on the seasons, it's based on the tides, it's based on a perfect divine system rather than a physical, purely scientific system. It's about mimicking the rotations of the heavens, not necessarily the rotations of the planets that surround the sun. It's inherently geocentric as well. So take that as you will. Christopher Warnock has a lot of really good information on this. I also just recommend reading his book, Fixed Stars, Constellation, and Signs Magic. That's got a really good basis for a lot of stuff that you will develop out of this practice. In my humble opinion, it's a really good book. But the days and hours are really easy to learn. Every single day starts out with the same hour. So Sunday will start out with the sun hour. Monday or moon day will start out with the moon hour. They're divided up into 12-hour sets, 12-day and 12-night hours. These are all calculated based on the individual day in accordance with sunrise, sunset, and the next sunrise. Each day lasts sunrise to sunrise, so dawn on the moon day will be the start of the first hour of moon day. It will not be until right before dawn on Tuesday that moon day is over. They are different from our actual days. It's important to take note of that. Now, when you're starting out, it's pretty easy to just do, okay, I'll work moon hours during moon day, but you can also get some pretty unique combinations out of all of these different variations. For example, Saturn day and Mars hour is particularly good for conjurations of any kind, especially more coercive conjurations and conjuring more malefic spirits. Mercury day moon hour is also really good for conjuring watery spirits and spirits of the air. Moon Day and Sun Hour can be really good for bringing clarity to information or also for obscuring information. There's a lot of unique combinations you can do. I recommend exploring these, trying them out, and seeing how things work best for you, and trying to implement unique applications, especially when it comes to conjuration. Another really helpful tool to have is the planetary squares or the cameos. These are squares of numbers that correspond to the planets. These are especially helpful for creating sigils, which you'll see for particular spirits like the planetary intelligence seeds and the planetary spirit, or the planetary demon and the planetary angel. These are really helpful. They can also be used for creating new sigils, creating new spirits, creating all kinds of different things that will allow you to imbue certain planetary essences into them, as well as you'll be able to create certain things on top of them, such as powders, oils, as well as talismans. Keeping them with planetary materia is very helpful. I highly recommend researching that further. And lastly, another important aspect that is going to be used in everything planetary is planetary correspondences. There's a billion and a million correspondence charts out there for the planets. I recommend referencing Agrippa. Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy talk about, one, a general list of correspondences as well as how to identify new plants. Liber 777 by Aleister Crowley also has a good correspondence list. If you can figure out how to read it, it's pretty easy to figure out how to read, but it's also kind of laid out in an interesting way. There's a bunch of correspondence books out there as well. Complete Magician's Tables. Liber 776 and a half was one that was popular for a while. You can also just go on Google Images and look up planetary correspondences. Find lists really easily. That's what I did for a long time. Plenty of YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff, but I actually encourage you to find your own correspondences, especially in your local area. Again, those local spirits have certain powers and potencies that you can't just buy dried, And also think about the actual area you're buying it from. Again, a solar herb that you find at a church is going to be very different from a solar herb you find at the crossroads in a cemetery. These are very different things, very different powers and potencies that when you bring them in have very distinct effects. I recommend searching these out yourself and finding your own correspondences and building your own allies. Having a good relationship with these plants is critical to completely revolutionizing your practice. Once you have these planetary familiars as well, they'll be able to help you identify planetary herbs that are best for different things and the actual virtues that come forward from these herbs beyond the purely planetary. So, once you're actually in conjuration, what are you going to do? This is going to be a general list of things that is good for any conjuration, but it's also good when you're calling up your 7 planetary spirits to get your 7 planetary familiars. So, on that, I'll give you 7 things to ask. First, ask for a sigil that will make it easier to call the spirit by, the actual spirit you're calling. Sometimes they may deny this. I will say that the Olympic spirits denied me this request until I conjured them more. This is just more about getting familiar with them. Getting to know and understand these spirits better will give them more trust in you. I've had other spirits who are just like, yeah, here's a sigil, have fun. And sometimes the sigil that you're given might not be as good as the sigil that's already out there. It kind of depends. Ask for a short form conjuration to call them by, that you can get them there and present without having to go through the whole process again. There's a lot of different ways this can manifest. For some, it might literally just be, say this thing and do this action, and they'll come forward. For others, it might be a smaller ritual. For a certain spirit I have a pact with, it is a short form ritual that just involves a candle and certain incense and another offering, and then just saying a certain prayer 4 times, and he's there. Very, very clearly there. For others, it will literally be as simple as make this sign and blink twice. It kind of depends. You can ask for more specific short form stuff. They might give it, they might deny it, but pretty much every spirit will give you some form of conjuration. It's then also a good idea to ask about their offices. Now, you can either ask, what are your offices? Because sometimes it'll just be kind of general and vague. Like, a lot of the more obscure grimoires will be like, oh, this spirit is great for everything. They do all the things. And it's like, well, what are all the things? Right? There's a lot of really good examples of this out there. But you can also ask more specific questions about the offices. So, for example, the Olympic spirits, some of them have very unique and interesting offices. Some of them teach certain things, like alchemy. Some of them are said to prolong your life. Ask about that, see what happens. Some of them have weird things, like Bethor and Aratron. They have kings that rule over parts of the world. Ask them about that. The next thing I recommend asking is asking for a spell to do with them. This is usually something done through them or through the spirits that you receive from them. This can give you a lot of insight into the actual magic that they do, as well as can really broaden your perspective. I personally recommend asking for a spell in general and not necessarily asking for a specific spell. Make sure it's something actually useful, first of all, but I recommend avoiding asking for something super specific the first time around. You can ask for more specific spells later on, but having that first initial, here's the spell, it can give you some interesting results. It might give you something that is lesser talked about from the spirit. They might give you something that is a bit more tailored to you. But whatever it is, it can grant you a lot of insight into the nature of the spirit and your relationship with them. Additionally, I recommend asking what spirits that spirit serves and what are the ones that serve under it. This is a bit of a weird one, but it can show you the hierarchy that you're engaging with or the perceived hierarchy that you're engaging with. Spirit hierarchies are usually something that are written down in these books but aren't super elaborated on. Different books will have different ideas of what the hierarchy looks like. Personally, I think it's a good idea to form your own spirit hierarchies through direct engagement with them, through learning about them, through discussing different things with them, and uncovering more and more what the spiritual ecosystem that you're in looks like. And having this question right off the bat will give you a direct insight into that. Similarly, when you get your familiar, I recommend asking your familiar what their relation to the spirit you got them from looks like. It'll give you some very interesting results. I recommend usually at the end of a session to ask for any wisdom that the spirit might wish to impart upon you. This is always a very interesting one. It gives you some weird stuff, quite frankly. But it shows you more about their nature, the way they interface with the world, as well as the way they interface with you, and anything that you might need to know at this current moment. Seventhly, this is optional, technically, but ask for a familiar from the spirit. Now, obviously, for the Olympic spirits or whatever spirits you're calling up, do this, please. But in general, it's not always necessary to ask for a familiar, but familiars are helpful. More specifically, for spirits outside of the planetary ones, it's helpful to have a spirit who is essentially the emissary of the one that you're calling upon, so that you don't have to call them up all the time. It depends on your relationship to that spirit, though. You know, if you're asking for someone to be your patron, you might gain familiars over time who can help you more quickly call that spirit. That familiar might actually be that short form conjuration. You might also gain familiars that are to help you with certain tasks so that that spirit doesn't necessarily have to be called every single time. There's different reasons why you might want one. And for clarification, a familiar is any spiritual being that directly serves under another spiritual being and a part of a hierarchy and is a spirit that is familiar to you. A spirit who's able to help you personally and that you have all the secret handshakes for. And in some cases, it might not be a random spirit. You know, some cases that demon is your familiar, that angel is your familiar, a dead person is your familiar. There's some very interesting cases of it. You know, there's some rituals that are like how to make the Archangel Gabriel your familiar. It's a bit interesting, something to look into. Now, there's some more specialized questions that you can ask different spirits for different reasons. Some of them we've already talked about, but a really interesting one is asking information about the origin text, like explain some information about it. If you're confused about a part of the conjuration, ask about it. If you want to know more about the text or how to engage with that grimoire more specifically, talk to the spirits in the grimoire. You can also ask them to reveal private information. This is especially good for spirits who uncover truth, who uncover hidden objects, things like that. This is often done in the case of, for me at least, often done in the case of, okay, I'm getting two different stories, someone tell me the truth. I'm going to go to the spirits who I trust rather than the people who are very fallible and very messy. Or I'll go to spirits for divinations. That's very helpful. Especially for tougher matters, you might want to do a full conjuration rather than a simple divinatory reading. You can give them petitions, just straight up conjure them and say, hey, do this thing for me. Cool, thank you. I've done that before for plenty of things. You can ask for specific magical secrets or spells. I've done this before plenty of times where I'll do the full conjuration and ask for a specific spell. I do the full conjuration for the reason of I want their full presence there so that I can have the necessary information for that. I sometimes also do full conjurations as examples to people. We'll talk about that a bit later. You can ask for more clarification on offices. You can ask them to give you further information about it. Again, asking those things like, what are your kings? What does this mean? Hey, it says you do this weird thing that I'm not really sure what it means. Can you tell me what that actually means or what that looks like in practice? You can also ask about spirit vessels. If you really want to bring a spirit into your life, it's a good idea to make a spirit vessel. I'm going to do a whole video about a whole podcast about spirit vessels at some point. But they take on many forms. They are very helpful for actually face-to-face engagement. They can be anything from a statue to a full-on spirit pot, things like that. Spirit vessels take many different forms. And next up is pacts. Pacts are very important. You're going to get a whole section later on in this video, so stay tuned for those, but pacts are something to ask about. So as we get more and more involved in conjuration, it's good to start picking up things like the Pentacles of Solomon. I highly recommend looking at them at the very least for the purpose of making conjuration go more smoothly. They're immensely helpful spiritual technologies, and they're designed to command and compel spirits by their very virtue. They're not necessarily talismans, per se, though some people use them in a more talismanic context, but they are spiritual technologies. They are tools that are designed to command certain forces, create certain conditions, we'll put it like that. They're very interesting. I'll talk more about them at some point. They're my favorite thing to use ever. And they can be made really easily or in more complex ways. Very simply, you can print them out on consecrated paper, say the oration of the Pentacles after sprinkling with holy water, and then fumigate them. This can be done... Here's a secret tip, by the way, that is super helpful. Every single spell work possible can be done on the Wednesday during the Mercury hour. It can be done for everything. All conjurations can be done Mercury day and hour. Secret tip from the Greater Key of Solomon. Similarly, all pentacles can be made during that time. You can also make them during the planetary day and hour. You can also make them Mercury day during the planetary hour if you can't do them during the Mercury hour. The hugest tip that I completely forgot about for a second, Mercury day and hour can do everything. Fun fact. Waxing moon, waning moon. Play with it. See what happens. It's super fun. But the pentacles can be printed out on consecrated paper, fumigated, said the oration of the pentacles after sprinkling with holy water, and then you can keep them and use them in that regard. You can also make them in wax. I like to make them in beeswax. I got these circle molds. You can pour the beeswax into them. There's consecrations for the beeswax. You can add different herbs to them as well. Drawing them out is pretty easy. Just consecrate the whole process. They're super easy to make that way. You can also make them on metal. There's a lot of people who already sell them on metal, and then you can just purchase that in the Mercury day and hour and then say your prayers and consecrations over it. I like to add some more stuff to that. In particular, I'm very interested in scalding or scarification of the pentacles through hot oil that is designed for the condition, or at the very least designed for the planet. This is something that I like to do. It's not necessary by any means, but it's something that I find adds certain power and force to the pentacle. You can then add the pentacle into different types of charm bags. You can add it into spirit vessels. I love pentacles. They're super awesome. But here's the best ones to have for conjuration. The fifth pentacle of Mars, which has a little scorpion on it. The fifth pentacle of Mars is designed to protect against evil spirits. It says in particular it defends against demons and causes them to obey. It's very powerful and is super helpful in conjuration regardless of whether you're trafficking with demons or with general strong spirits. The versicle around it says, "Thou shalt go upon the lion and the adder, the young lion and the dragon thou shalt tread under thy feet." It's very helpful. Make that one on iron if you can. If you can't, at the very least have some metal of it. I'm going to be posting a blog post simultaneous with this episode with some notes. I'm going to put a particular oil, scarification, scalding combination for this pentacle in there. So I highly recommend checking out that blog post for more details on that aspect. It'll have a bunch of other stuff in it as well, but we'll get back to that later. The next one I recommend is having the fourth pentacle of the sun. It's a little wheel looking one. It has 8 spokes on it, and it is designed to help you see the spirits. It's very helpful. I recommend making this on metal as well, or on wax, or keeping it in a charm bag with other herbs like eyebright to allow you to see more easily. You can also turn this into an oil and anoint yourself with it. Very helpful pentacle, very usable. You can also have it on paper if you want. You can just put a little bit of eyebright onto the paper with either tinctured or wrapped up in a packet style. The versicle for this is, "Lighten my eyes so that I sleep not in death, lest my enemies say, I have prevailed against him." The next one I recommend is having the third pentacle of Jupiter. This is an interesting one. It's got a cross in it, and it's got the Kamea sigils of Jupiter on it, as well as some holy names. I recommend making this one as well. It is for protection against any enemy and against any evil spirits. This is just good to have as a general additional protection. It's helpful to have, especially as you're leaving the circle, as you're making sure that you're safe after conjuration. You might not necessarily need this one or even the fifth pentacle of Mars during the Olympic spirit conjurations, but I recommend having this for the aerial spirit conjurations. It's helpful in general. It's a very good pentacle to have all around on you at all times to protect and defend against any malignant spirits that may arrive around you. Spirits are attracted to our practice, to our magic, and it can be anything from the ambient dead all the way over to more malefic spirits that reside around you, especially if you're doing it in areas where there's already a lot of spirit traffic. All kinds of parasitic spirits can follow you around. You might be trying to call upon a certain demon, but lots of spirits like to impersonate those, so it's a good idea to have something that, one, pushes those malignant spirits away, and two, helps clarify those spirits as they're coming forward. The versicle for the third pentacle of Jupiter is a Song of Degrees. "They that trust in Tetragrammaton shall be as Mount Zion, which cannot be removed but abideth forever." The next up is the second pentacle of Luna, the second pentacle of the moon, which protects against all perils by water. It also calms down natural events, and is particularly mentioned to be helpful in conjuration by stopping rain that may be caused by the conjuration. This has happened to me many times before. I have other methods personally that I use that work better for me and my packs, but this is a really good pentacle in general also for just stopping rain. I've used this in combination with some PGM stuff that I do. It's a really great pentacle. If you are going about conjuration for the first time, you already don't have spirits that stop rain, I recommend having this pentacle on hand. The versicle for this pentacle is, "In have I put my trust. I will not fear. What can man do unto me?" It's a very good pentacle. I recommend using it. There's a bunch of other pentacles out there that can be used. I honestly recommend looking through all of them. There's plenty of databases and websites for them. You can also just pick up a copy of the Greater Key of Solomon and look at all the pentacles. The Matters Key is fine enough. People also use the Peterson version, which is available in Esoteric Archives for free. Sacredtext.com has the Mather's translation for free on it. Both are fine. I have a physical copy of the Veritable Key of Solomon, which has different pentacles in it and a couple different prayers. I like that one too. Just pick up whichever version you find is most helpful to you. And read through the pentacles, see which ones appeal to you. Think also cunningly about them. Think about, okay, for example, here's a little bit of a tip. The Venus Pentacles talk about making friends. They talk about causing people to be friendly towards you, to be kind and courteous towards you. Spirits are people. Do with that what you will. Same with the Mercury ones. They make you favorable towards people, especially favorable towards people who are higher up in the hierarchy than you. So I recommend playing around with those. There's a lot of ways that you can incorporate pentacles, and I just personally really recommend them. I also recommend that you talk to your familiars about the pentacles. This gives you really interesting results. They might give you some interesting things to add to them or ways to make them that empower them further. You can also give your familiars pentacles. This will allow them to work with them as you're using them. So you've got your 7 planetary familiars, you've got your tools for conjuration, you've got some pentacles going now. What next? How do we continue the work? Well, I recommend researching the spirits you are most interested in to call. If you're listening to this episode, you probably have a couple spirits you're already interested in. As before, study those spirit hierarchies. While they're not completely infallible, they are helpful for actually understanding at least a framework for approaching some of these spirits. So the offices that most interest you. Most spirits will have offices in the more well-known grimoires, such as the Ars Goetia. I recommend looking into those and seeing what spirits are of most interest to you. Start writing down a couple of them. Research them, cross-reference them. Check out different accounts of them, because some of them are in different grimoires and have different approaches, different offices, and the like. Also pay attention to, again, those more cunning, more between the lines ways of using what they provide. Look for more sorceress applications to some of the things they do. For example, if one says he built a tower, think about how that might apply to protection magic or to offensive magic. If one can create illusions in the air, think about what that might do for dreams, things like that. As you're researching, you'll probably find things like pacts, especially in the Grimoire Verum. So it's probably a good idea to really talk about pacts, since I mentioned it earlier as something you can ask about. So a pact is really any formal agreement between you and the spirits. And while it might sound like a big deal, we make pacts every single day. Going to a store and buying something is a pact. Saying that you're going to wake up on time, get ready for work, and then go to work, and then actually do your job is a pact. In return, you're making money. In return, you're getting a service. That is a pact inherently. When you're going to a spirit and you're saying, hey, I'm calling you forward, you are going to appear and you're going to grant me these things. In return, I will grant you these things. That's a pact. And pacts are built on agreement, negotiation, clauses, all these things, because they are contracts. They are, I'm going to do this for you, you're going to do this for me. I'm going to provide this for you, you're going to provide this for me. You're going to teach me this, in return I'm going to help you with this. And it can be very small things. Very often you'll find novenas for saints that operate like this. I am adoring God, I am a good Christian, I am invoking all these things, I am reaching out to you. I know that you're able to do these things and you're able to create these virtues within me. As you are doing this, allow me to gain access to the benefits I desire. And in return, I will do something for you. I will spread your name around. I will do 7 Hail Marys every single day at church. I will go to church. All these things. For pacts, they are often negotiated during the actual conjuration. I've found, you'll present your bit, they'll present their bit. You'll make addendums, you'll change things around. You'll make it as is necessary for you. They're made oftentimes on parchment paper or some other form of paper. Parchment is particularly good. Parchment is a weird paper to really properly source, but if you can get parchment, definitely get it. If not, look at some other papers. Just have something nice. You can also put the pact itself in your book. I personally like to have a separate pact that I then put back into the book, but that's just me. You'll write out all your terms, which will be negotiated further with the spirit, and then finally signed in an agreeable way, both by you and the spirit. Usually they'll sign it with their sigil. You'll receive a sigil from them, and they'll mark it onto the paper. Now, blood can be really helpful, again, for quicker calls, but it can also be very unsafe. Again, make sure that you really trust the spirit that you are making this pact with. Make sure that you are fully agreeing to all the terms, that you fully believe the spirit will hold up their end of the pact. And also make sure that you feel comfortable having them have full access to you at all times. This is a very important thing to have in mind, is that these are two ways. You are able to call upon them by the pact, and they are able to call upon you by the pact. So make sure you're comfortable with everything you're agreeing to. Make sure you're really okay with everything. And if you're not, that's fine. You can say, no, I don't want to do this. And if they say, okay, then I won't agree, then it's like, okay, we'll part our ways. It doesn't have to be aggressive. It doesn't have to be angry. Just let it all play out as necessary. Which leads us into breaking the pact itself. Renegotiation is possible. It can often be really as simple as just calling them up and talking about it. Communication is key of Solomon. But really just talk to them about it. Say, hey, this is no longer important to me in my life, or hey, I'm not able to do this anymore. And they might be like, okay, yeah, we can change some agreements, or no, I really don't want to change agreements. Let's break things off. Communicate with them, speak to them about it, see what all is really possible and feasible for you two, and go forward from there. Terms can be renegotiated all the time. You can speak to them and say, this is no longer feasible for me, but I can do this instead. Or, overall, I just don't think I'm getting what I need out of this pact. I think we should break it and dissolve it so we don't have contact with each other. Or the contact we have is not in the same level of familiarity. And all this is really easily possible once you get that short form conjuration. You just call them up, hold the pact out, talk about it. You can even talk about during the actual process itself of the conjuration, how to dissolve the pact should you need it. This is something that I recommend asking, get all your information up front when you're doing stuff. But, after all the clarifications, why do you actually pact? It's way easier to ensure results. You have a written agreement. You have to do this when I say you have to do this, so they have to do it. It makes it easier to call the spirit because you have a physical link to them now. It's much easier than even the conjuration. Sometimes it's all you have to do is open your page and call them. It opens up a lot more opportunities in the relationship. It's a much closer relationship rather than a I call you when I need you. It should really be done for one, specific tasks, or two, for larger relationships you want to open up deeper into your life. Because you are opening up a relationship. You are opening things up to them. It's really important that you make sure that you actually want to go through with the pacts that you're going through with, and not just doing them out of obligation or feeling the need to. You should really be doing this if you truly want to bring that spirit deeper into your life. And sometimes it's a good idea to not do a pact until you have built up more of a relationship with them and to really understand and know them on that deeper level. But it does open up so much to you, so it is something I do recommend, just with caution. I also recommend, as you continue your work, to start comparing notes between grimoires, especially the lesser talked about ones. I recommend looking through them and seeing what the differences between spirits are, what different circles are like, all the different techniques. See what tools are made, see why these tools are made, and if they have a really unique effect with them. Some tools are mentioned in one time in one grimoire for one spirit, but they have a lot of use for them. Talk to your familiars about these. Talk to them about, hey, this tool is really interesting. What's it actually used for? Or, hey, these spirits are called in a different way. What's up with that? Look at the comparable names. There's oftentimes corruption of names throughout the grimoire. Sometimes a spirit will have 50 different names that are all basically the same thing, and it's the exact same spirit, but they're called something else in a different book and are even addressed as a different class of spirits sometimes. Bring all these techniques, bring these questions to your familiars and ask for their opinions on them. Ask your familiars to aid in your conjurations as well. Ask them to show up, ask them to be here and present for you and ready to help out. These spirits are always here for us. We can call them into just about anything. You can ask them for better conjuration techniques. If you don't really jive with a certain thing in a book, you can present it to them and say, hey, I don't really like how this conjuration is done. Is there a better way to do this for me? Is there another way that is less aggressive, that is less coercive, that is more aggressive, more coercive? It depends on what you're looking for. And you can start to rework what you have already. You have these base tools. Okay, let's start building them up. Let's add more stuff to them. Oh, I might want to add more stuff to these tools, add more exorcisms, more blessings, things like that. And as you have more and more packs, you're able to start adding more and more things to them. As you get more familiars, they can be added into your conjurations. They can also be helpful in showing badges of authority. If you have a familiar from a high-ranking spirit, calling up a lower-ranking spirit and having that spirit as an ally to vouch for you and to be like, hey, I have this authority over you. I'm able to bring you further in because I know a guy who knows a guy, and that guy will come forward if you don't answer. It's very helpful. And once you have gotten to a point where you're like, okay, these are the spirits I want to pact with, here's what I'm looking for, start to call and conjure them. Explore the ones you're most interested in pacting with. Go to the ones that you have the deepest interest in. There shouldn't necessarily be a holdback on things, be properly prepared, which is why I recommend the 7 planetary familiars in the first place, but go to what you're most interested in. If you're really interested in diving into the Grand Grimoire, jump into it, look into it, research it, talk to your spirits about it, research the histories, hierarchies, and form really tailored questions based around this grimoire to those spirits you're calling, and have some really long-term goals in mind. Even if it is just to conjure them to gain their allyship, why do you want that allyship? Why do you want to conjure in the first place? What draws you to this type of magic? Because Grimoire magic is not the only type of magic. It's really awesome and I love it, but it is not the only type of magic out there. So really think about why you want to do this. Journal about it. I'm a big fan of doing other things outside of magic to prepare for magic, Journal about it. Talk with some trusted people about it. We'll get to that more later, but talk with some people about it. See, okay, this is really what I want in my life. This is really where I'm going. Divine on it, honestly. Ask your familiars what these spirits are able to offer to you that may not be found in books. See if they know stuff about them and see if they can really draw you deeper into relationship with them. Ask them questions to ask, Ask your familiars if there's anything that you should be asking them. Ask your other spirits, If you have a practice outside of this, which I recommend you have, talk to them. If you have a very Hellenic polytheistic practice and you are deeply devoted to Hestia and you want to conjure Humats from the Verum, who's all about books, ask Hestia, what would be a good way to integrate Humats into my personal library? Because you're a part of this household, you know the most about this house, what's a good way to bring him in? And think about anything additional you might need for particular conjurations. Revisit the pentacles. Some are more appropriate and applicable to different types of spirits than others, especially the treasure spirits. Lots of pentacles about treasure, lots of pentacles about money. See what is most applicable to your conjurations and add them in. Also look for warnings about spirits. Some spirits have particular tools that are required for them in that grimoire. Other grimoires might not mention them. Other variations on the grimoire might not mention them. Talk to your spirits about what's omitted and what isn't omitted. And seek out the spirits for their tutelage. Seek them out for knowledge, Do magic to be better at magic. Look for spirits who are able to teach you more things than you already know. If you're really interested in alchemy, look for a spirit that rules over alchemy. Look for a spirit who's integrated into these systems. For astrology, seek out a spirit who teaches astrology. That's what I did with the Prince Stolas. I have learned a lot about astrology just by virtue of speaking to him. I have a lot of plant allies now because of my pacts with these various spirits. Make your conjurations, and in particular, really seek out spirit patrons to aid in your sorceress goals. Seek out spirits who will really patron your craft. Go for spirits who can really boost your practice. Don't just go to random spirits. I know it's really cool to call up random guys and see what happens, and I have done that before, but I can't recommend enough going to spirits who will really get you where you want to be. And I recommend having specific spirits to teach you, rather than a whole bunch to teach you. Have spirits who are focused in specific areas. Because you can learn so much from so many spirits, which is why, again, 7 planetary familiars is great. But if you want to learn a particular type of sorcery, go to one spirit who really patrons that. Like if you want to learn necromancy really well, go to a necromantic spirit and learn all the things about necromancy through them. They might recommend other spirits to join in, but really focus your practice around one necromantic spirit rather than 20 necromantic spirits. Build up, develop your relationship, and really focus on fostering that relationship. It's relational, you don't want to just call up guys to have guys called up. Frequently call upon these spirits now that you have their packs. You're able to really call them whenever you want now. Bring to them your ideas, techniques, anything that you are thinking on. Spell work, if you have a spell idea, go to them and say, hey, I'm really interested in doing this type of spell work. What do you say? Is there a prayer you want to add into this? Ask your spirits for prayers that you can say over any spell work to add their power into it. Ask them how they do magic. Ask them what their preferred offerings are. Ask them about their stories. Learn about who they are beyond what a book tells you. See what they really want to do. When you ask about how they do magic, they will give you ways that you can join them in that, ways to be more conducive to them. For their offerings, they might have specific things that they like on certain days. Learn about those special days and make a big meal for them. Feed them. Give them power and force in this world. Sometimes their offerings might not be food. Some of them might really prefer incense and would hate to have physical food given to them. Some of them really like food. Some of them like hot foods, cold foods. Some of them want you to have raw foods for them, whereas they really want to be really well done and well cooked. Learn about them. Learn what their stories are. Learn who they say they are, what they identify themselves as. Learn who their version of I is. Learn who their version of me is. Learn about what they actually do in the world and how they relate to you, what their view of you is, and how you can develop that view to be better for each other. And just keep doing magic. Just do more magic. It's awesome. It's so cool being a wizard. Just keep doing spells. Bring spirits forward and say, I want to do this. Let's do this. Let's work towards this goal. What are some spells for this? It's awesome. It's great. I love doing it. Have them teach you to make certain powders, certain oils, certain incenses that are just better for you to use. Imbue them into your materia and imbue them into your actual way of life. And you will see so many different results come forward. Now, I want to talk about the thing I keep talking about, which is, bring other people into this. Talk to other people about this. With caution. So much caution. This is probably the biggest thing I have painfully learned through my entire occult career. Not everyone needs to be sitting with you at a conjuration. Not everyone should be introduced to these spirits through you. I recommend people who are already magical, people who already have pacts with other spirits or the ones that you share with, people who are serious about this, people who are respectful to both you, your time, and your practice, as well as to the spirits, and people who actually have a reason to be there, and who want to be there, and who will do stuff when they're there. It goes without saying, but, if people are not respectful of your time, your spirits, your anything, don't bring them into circle. If people are just interested, but don't actually have questions or a purpose to be there, they don't need to be there. Have people who actually have a reason to be there, who have questions to ask, who have things they want to receive, even if they're not fully magical or just curious, but have that open mind and respect. You'll save you so much trouble. Especially, I've just had people ask some of the rudest questions to spirits, and it's mind-boggling to me why you would do that. It's he's right there in front of you. Even if you cannot fully sense him, you know that spirit is there. Or at least are humoring me enough to believe that I believe that the spirit is there, right? It's frustrating. And I recommend having friends who you trust. It's great to have people in circle. It's not so great when they ask unique and interesting questions. I might talk about those questions at some point in a more private setting, but oh wow, I have heard some crazy things. But that being said, friends are great. Having friends with you to join you in packs. I have a couple packs shared with friends. I have a couple familiars shared amongst friends. It's a wonderful thing. I've had so much fun having friends over and doing all sorts of spell work with them, rituals, magic. It's some of the best stuff ever. I have all kinds of fun plans with all my friends. But it took time to realize there's some friends who really shouldn't be brought into a circle. Ever. Not all your friends need to be magical, even if you're very openly magical. And as you develop further into your relationships, expand deeper into the hierarchies. Expand more and more and more into the hierarchies that are presenting themselves. And as you do, you'll start to find really what your niches are. For some people, it will be having a million spirits. I am definitely one of those people. For others, it will be having a handful of close spirits to them and discovering more personal techniques from just that handful of spirits. As you decide to go deeper and deeper, go as deep as you feel is actually necessary. For some people, it'll be having 3 spirits from one grimoire, 2 spirits from another, and 1 additional spirit outside of that. For others, it'll be working through an entire grimoire system, having packs with all the spirits, and having them all very closely to you. For others, it'll be having multiple full grimoires. For others, 1 spirit. It just depends. And you can do a lot with very little. So it really is only what you think is necessary, what you think is actually feasible for you, and also what is going to most benefit you. Which is why I also want to talk about filling out the rest of your practice outside of grimoires. So before we go further, it is very important that spirit communication is developed. Kind of goes without saying, to do any of this work, you need to be able to communicate with spirits. In particular, communicating without the use of divinatory tools, so you can receive this information. Now, communication doesn't have to be fully auditory. It can take on many different forms. Having some visual component is very helpful, especially for sigils, but it can be through smell, it can be through knowing, it can be through all these different faculties. Having all of these different faculties up, running, and workable for you is going to be very important for actually communicating with the desired spirits and actually getting the results you need. Mediumship development is a huge part of this, as well as scrying development. Mediumship development and scrying development are both very important for this. Mediumship and scrying tend to go hand in hand with each other. Mediumship here I'm defining more as the direct communication, and scrying more the direct perception. But there's a lot of different ways to develop these together. In particular, practice the ars sensorium, the sensory arts, being in touch with yourself and the world around you. You can practice this in a million different ways. Meditation is really the easiest. You just sit down, focus in, breathe in, exhale, and focus on each part of your body. Focus on where there's tension. Focus on each part of your body. Focus on what all is going on in it. Become very in tune with yourself. Begin to expand outwards into the world. Perceive things in front of you. Perceive things behind you, to your left, to your right. As you start to develop this, you'll start to really feel out the rest of the world, start to really feel yourself, start to understand how things move within you, both your own body as well as your own spirits, as they start to perceive through you and you start to perceive through them. Don't force it. Don't feel the need to really push forward for this, but allow it to come more naturally. There's plenty of pentacles, formulas, and things to help out. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But don't try to force it. Don't try to push it. That's going to make it more and more difficult. As for actual communication, I recommend going to the ancestors or the dead as practice, as they are much more directly available to us. They're more easy to access, and they're able to communicate in ways that are more understandable for us. This can be done very simply. Set up a glass of water, a white candle, that's all you need, and reach out to an ancestor. Focus. Extend your presence towards that light. Extend your presence toward the ancestors. Ask for someone to come forward. Start engaging by trying to feel them out rather than directly, okay, this is the person right here, right now. feel for smells, feel for a vision, for a particular color. Feel these things out. Texture's also been really helpful for me lately. And you'll start to build up more and more clarity. This will take time. Don't rush it. But it will take some time to really develop. And you'll start getting messages and you'll start to understand them. Don't try to intellectualize them. Don't try to interpret them. Just get the message and process it. And compare it and make sure it's confirmable, consistent, and at the very least, usable in some way. But that's really helpful for developing your mediumship skills. For scrying, I recommend practicing with your friends. When I say scrying, a lot of people think staring into your orb or mirror, but you don't have to. It can be as simple as closing your eyes and focusing on something, calling that forward. You can also focus on an object with your open eyes, really start to feel it out. This is where mediumship and scrying tend to blend together. You can use mediumistic techniques to scry. There's a bunch of different ways that this manifests, but practice with people. Have friends who you will send images to, who you'll ask to come along with you and look at stuff and compare notes. I have a bunch of scrying groups that I do with friends. It's super fun. We compare notes all the time. We find, oh, this is accurate. This is the consistent theme. We pick up on different stuff naturally because everyone's going to pick up on something different based on who they are, what spirits they interface with, and what methods they're going through. But just feel it out and compare your notes. Practice on the go. I like to go outside all the time and just scry with trees, with plants, with places, and see what all is going on with them. And truly, scry everything. Everything can be scryed. You can scry everything. You can even scry dreams, which is something that I really like. If you're able to pull up a dream that you had, you can scry deeper into it and really get into the sensory art of the dream. You can scry into just about anything. It's very, very open, very easy. Once it clicks, it really clicks. It's hard to fully describe how to do it. There's lots of people who also offer mediumship and scrying training. I don't offer that personally. That's just not something I feel comfortable with doing right now. I find that it's just a process of figuring it out, and then it clicks and you're like, oh, okay, this is how you scry. And it becomes much easier. There are also plenty of formulas to actually help you with scrying. Lots of incantations aid in opening up the spirit senses, often drawing upon mythopoetic ideas. There's a great one in the Hecateon that I'll put in my blog post that's open for anyone to use. That one is really good. There's a bunch of different charms you can add in. There's a bunch of different prayers you can do, saints you can petition who will open up your eyes, open up your senses. Doing those incantations and charms before going into a scrying session can be helpful, or even during. If you're seeing things are clouding up, you can pray and say, blow these clouds away, allow me to go deeper. Prayer is very important to me. There's going to be a whole episode on it. Incense can also be helpful. Solar, mercurial, and lunar are honestly the best, in my opinion. Making any sort of solar, mercurial, or lunar incense powder and then burning that is really, really helpful. Frankincense, mastic, a bit of jasmine, as well as I would add into that a little bit of lavender and one more Sierra herb like eyebright. Say several prayers and psalms over it, grind it up, put that onto your burner, and carefully waft it up and allow yourself to be immersed in that smell and use that to help open up your faculties and senses. There's a formula to see spirits from the Book of Oberon. I'll also post that in the blog post. It also mentions using anise and camphor in a incense. You can blend those together and burn them and get visions. Plain old eyebright will also work. Eyebright works amazing. I love it. Dreaming charms can also help when our waking life makes communication hard. There's plenty of dreamers charms out there. Easiest one, bay leaf under the pillow. Say a prayer, bay leaf under the pillow. Apple seed under the pillow really helps me as well with specific spirits that I pray to. That one works 100% of the time for me. That's also due to some of the packs I have though, so, mileage may vary, but bring your apple seeds to your spirits and ask them to show you a dream. bring your bay leaves as well. See what happens. Speaking of your spirits, the Sorceress Dead are great allies to have on your side. Now, when I talk about the Sorceress Dead, there's a lot of different things I mean by that. Truly is anyone who was considered a magical practitioner or who could be considered a magical practitioner or a patron of the magical arts. Forming strong relationships with the magical dead really help you become a better magician. They will teach you in ways that are really just so human and interpersonal because they are human. They are people. They understand their struggles. They understand where we're not able to get everything. They're also able to help us get closer and closer to our goals by teaching us things that they did in life that maybe it's not written down about them. It's very easy to set up a space for them. You should just get a small table, cover it with a white cloth, add a glass of water, put your grimoires, some tools that you have, and white candles. You can add images of historical magicians such as Sao Cipriano. You can put in names of magicians if you don't have images of them, such as Arthur Gauntlet. You can put King Solomon on there. Put all kinds of paraphernalia for these historical magicians, but really put the ones that you want to work with, the ones you want to actually engage with. Don't just have random ones on there. I believe it is Gateways Through Light and Shadow that has a litany to the Sorceress Dead. That can be useful for a framework. I recommend that book for some of the technologies in it. I don't take it as gospel, personally. Have some historical magicians on there if you can. Keep grave dirt of local Sorceress Dead there as well. You might not have a ton of magical practitioners who died around you. I'm very, very blessed to live in Savannah, Georgia right now. Savannah, Georgia has a long, long history of Sorceress Dead through conjure doctors, through various witches in the colonial times. So many magical people here. It's a wonderful place for that. But keeping their grave dirt is very helpful. It allows you to have a much more concrete link to them. So research the magical history of where you live, look into what their practices were, see if you can call out to the Sorceress Dead, have them make themselves more known to you, and see if you can find their grave sites, or at the very least, call upon them as allies of your land. If you can even find their houses, that's a great place to go. It's also helpful to have a necromantic familiar or pact to help draw forth these spirits. This can be any sort of spirit that you might have, but there's a lot of really, really great necromantic spirits out there who can help draw forward these spirits and help you really make strong contact with them. Talk to them about how to make a good contact with the Sorceress Dead, both the more saintly historical ones who are farther away from you, and the more immediate local ones you can grab the dirt of. Run your ideas by these Sorceress Dead as well, especially ways of working conjuration. They will always be able to aid you in ways that you would never have thought of. They'll give you tips and tricks, techniques, and things that can really just boost and amplify your spell work. Talk to them about conjurations, especially conjurations they did. For the Grimoire of Arthur Gauntlet, go to him and say, hey, this spell in here, I don't really understand it. What did you do for it? Oh, here's how it's done. Things like that. Even the pseudographical sorcerers like Sao Cipriano, King Solomon, they are still able to work through these materials. Invoke them in spell works, through litanies, through prayers, through special contracts that you've made with them. It's helpful to take all kinds of things from these spirits. There's a lot of really cunning and sorcerous things you can do. I don't want to give it all here for everyone, but there's a lot. I also just recommend that you round out your practice with other traditions. It's really helpful to have a framework outside of the grimoires, especially for different protocols. If you just go through the grimoires, they don't really have all the complex scaffolding that a full tradition will have. And you can have any tradition that doesn't have to be Abrahamic. You don't have to convert to anything to work these magics. Hellenic polytheism is a great outside source for this. I don't consider myself a pure Hellenic polytheist. I would definitely make a lot of people mad if I called myself that. But the Grimoires are not bound to the Christian framework. They take a lot from a lot of other places. A lot of traditions culturally syncretize them. The Hellenic practices that are found in the PGM they mirror the Grimoire so much, so it's a great foundation to have. There's a lot of more Scandinavian and Norse practices that incorporate things like the pentacles into stave magic. I don't really know much about that. I'm gonna be so honest. I don't know that much about the Norse stuff. But you can probably integrate them into that. You can integrate the Egyptian pantheon as well. The PGM is both Greco-Egyptian. It's very important to incorporate all of that together. You can look into other more initiatic traditions. A lot of people I know go to African traditional religions, but those are not the only traditions that you can go to. You can go to various European traditions. There's plenty of very beautiful traditions out of India and really wonderful traditions out of Japan that can really form a good framework. I'm not a part of those traditions, but I have lots of friends in several different traditions around the world that are truly beautiful and that really round out a practice. I won't say what all my initiations are, but really look into those initiations, really look into a practice that you feel called to. Speak to your spirits about these practices. Speak to these spirits about, hey, I'm interested in finding a practice in the first place. They might suggest one to you. I have a friend who had one suggested to him, and he's thriving in that tradition. Reach out to people in those traditions, talk to them about it, and offer to engage with them on that, and really look for these traditions. Ask questions. Petition to the spirits that lead your traditions that you're interested in. If you have a tradition you're interested in, you are welcome to pray to those spirits of that tradition. Even go to a dead person who is from that tradition and say, hey, I'm looking for initiation. Guide me to the right people that you know who would have helped me. It's just really helpful to have a bunch of practices outside of these because they form a better framework, more scaffolding, and allow you to really round out a full practice. It's just helpful, especially when there's a lot of protocols that aren't mentioned in the Grimoires. It's helpful to have something that will really give you a more rounded worldview. And for some, that might just be witchcraft. Plain old witchcraft. With that being said, that closes out our episode. There's a lot that has been said here. It's a pretty long one, all things considered. But I'm so glad I finally got to do this. This was the one I was looking forward to the most when I started out this podcast. I hope you all learned at least a little something from this. I hope it was helpful. And please feel free to ask me questions. You can find me over at Instagram at Aiden the Witch. That is Witch with 2 V's, like the movie by Robert Eggers. You can also find me at my website, aidenthewitch.com. Again, Witch with 2 V's. You are also welcome to reach out to me by email. That's aidenthewitch1@gmail.com. aidenthevitch1@gmail.com. On my website, I also provide various services, both in divination and spell work. I have a completely redone website now. It's all nice and pretty. I offer divination of all kinds, but I'm specifically right now offering a spiritual framework reading. A spiritual framework reading is done to help you identify the spirits around you, help you identify your strengths and weaknesses in sorcery, as well as good ways to contact the spirits around you and draw them more into your life. You can do this if you are interested in just learning about these spirits, if you're interested in growing closer to the ones you already have, or if you believe there's a spirit that you really want to connect with, that you want to find a better framework for getting closer to. All that is offered through my website. Feel free to check it out. Without further ado, I'll give you my Goetic Gospel Choir, which is our music segment for this episode. Goetic Gospel Choir is also a play on Luciferian Light Orchestra. All their music is just a recommendation for this episode, but unofficially. The songs I have for this episode are Anima Christi, specifically because I find that, again, hymns are very helpful for this work. It brings those spiritual forces in better. I'll put in the Sky Snake Sorcery music playlist that I have a version of Anima Christi that I like, but in general, that hymn is very helpful. That meditation is very helpful. Next up is Dignitaries of Hell by Coven, a very fun, very evil, very Luciferian song. It's actually based on the Grand Grimoire and the hierarchy presented in there. Next up is Lucifer Corpus by Writing on the Wall, which is just one of my favorite songs in general. It's so good. it really embodies some of the more darker and evil aspects of the Grimoires, I guess. Not necessarily evil, but just like it really keeps me in tune with the more goetic aspects of it, the more demonological aspects. And rounding this list out is Bale by Exuma. If you know, you know. Well, I hope you all really enjoyed this episode. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next one. Again, feel free to reach out to me at AidenTheVivitch on Instagram, AidenTheVivitch1, that is the number 1, not spelled out, at gmail.com, and feel free to contact me for spellwork divination services over on my website at AidenTheVivitch.com. Thank you all for tuning in this week. Looking forward to seeing you all very soon. So let it be.